All right. Well, it's recording right now. So, hey, it's finally nice to meet a new face. And you can go by Luis. My name's Emiliano, and we're going to go ahead and discuss immigration. And to be honest, if you could clarify where you stood on there, I forgot, to be honest. I was literally just eating when, while you were getting ready. So go ahead and make your arguments, and I can go ahead and get those links that you sent me to share with everybody.
Sure. Well, Emiliano, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me onto your show. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I don't get platformed very often anymore, so thank you for that. Thank you for having and hosting a show about civil discourse, something that I think is sorely lacking in today's society. I appreciate very much your efforts. And if you don't mind, rather than starting with my arguments, I'd like to just tell you a little bit about myself, my background.
Even better.
So my name is Luis Manuel Ruiz. I was born in Ciudad Juarez, Mexico. Lived in El Paso, Texas, almost all of my life. Became a citizen of this great country at age 18. So immigration is something that's very near and dear to me. Half of my family still lives in Juarez right now. My father, his parents, all of my aunts on that side of the family. I come from a long line of teachers. So education is also really big to me. My grandfather, he my mom's dad, he brought his side of the family over when my mom was, I think, like, she was I think she was like about 10 or 11. And they moved over here. It was my grandfather's dream to become an American citizen. He did. He did a lot of things in Juarez, but when he came over here, he started working with the union. There was unions back then for painters. Then started his own business. So he showed me a lot about entrepreneurship, and he for him, having a business was one of the biggest things in the world to him. Very proud to have gotten his citizenship. He was the big father figure in my life, and so I take a lot from him. So that's a little bit about my family, my background. I was a I should have been in talented and gifted programs since I started school. In school, and this is really major to how I became who I am today. I was held back in classes. I was in Spanish language only classes, which were 2 grades inferior, because that's just how they do things in Texas. And for me, it set me on a path of rebellion. I rebelled because the classes were too slow for me. So I would finish my work, I would start making jokes, got in trouble. And by the time I finally got it into the gifted and talented program in 6th grade, education wasn't a priority to me anymore. I had started to fall in line with gangs and drugs, bad things that, for most of my teenage years, I participated in, ended up in federal prison at some point, got out, and then went to college. In my college years, I identified as a Chicano based off of all of what I had lived my whole life, also based off of the social justice teaching that I was getting from a lot of my Marxist professors. Later on, worked for El Paso city government. At the time, at UTEP, the University of Texas at El Paso, I was studying journalism, worked for the city of El Paso in the economic development sector. And it was during that time that I really saw the inner workings of government. I saw the unholy alliance between government and media, if you will. And before I ended college, I switched my majors to filmmaking. I quit my job in economic development after becoming certified in economic development because of this plan that happened here in El Paso that I hope we'll be able to talk a little bit more about. Sure. I can't tell you that I am a Republican. Can certainly tell you I'm not a Democrat, and we'll get into some of that as well. But so immigration, let's nail it down. I am pro-immigrant. I am an immigrant myself. However, I want to start here. I make a very big distinction between immigrants that came over organically. And I say organically, one family at a time, compared to what we have with caravans, that it's my assertion, I would say assertion, a little bit more strong of a word in my opinion, that are organized by globalist groups. Centro Sin Frontera is one that comes to mind, where you have people that are enticed. They're told that they're going to be able to come to the front of the line, that they're just going to have an automatic pass. So, nuanced. I'm pro-immigrant, but I do think that it's dangerous for our national sovereignty, the United States of America, the country where I live in right now, to have such a large number of people that oftentimes come over unvetted, that didn't. And this is where I think a lot of people say, like, that did the process. The process includes vetting, and I think vetting is really important. In my time, when I was a young man, I used to run drugs. That's what got me into prison. And so I've dealt with cartels. I've dealt with, and I know that it's not just drugs. I know that there's human trafficking. I know that there's it's not just human trafficking, but there's also like a whole occult element to this. You've heard about the femicides in Juarez.
Yes.
That has a lot to do. These are things that
Well, just in case
are
people don't know what that is, it's when young women, girls were, taken off and get their body parts and sold in the black market, right?
Yes, there was mass graves that started being discovered in Ciudad Juarez around 2000. Well, I mean, there's a lot of women that went missing for many years. The mass graves started being discovered in the early 2000s and reached, I think, critical mass, like where it was a really big thing around 2008. The discoveries. I mean, people had, it was a big thing as far as the young women that had been disappeared. But the discoveries that then confirmed people's worst fears, that's when it really started coming out into the light. And so these are some of the, I guess, the foundations of my arguments, and where why I can tell you that I cannot, in good conscience, align myself with the Democrat Party. Why I guess the conservative philosophy appeals much more to me, and I would consider myself a conservative. I'd like to see the Republican Party step up and do more and have a spine. I don't think that they really do. But to kind of start off, that's I guess where
No,
I'm
it's
coming
good.
from.
Yeah, I mean, that's good if people know your background. I mean, I consider myself a hybrid. I was born here in California, but I resided most of my life in Texas. And I frequent Mexico often. I used to live there every summer. And so I'm pretty familiar with Mexican politics and just the lifestyle there. And one of the things that mold my views with immigration is just history. Personal experience are important, but when you look at your personal experience, it's more of a reaction. You're going to become a reactionary instead of a person looks at solving problems in a holistic manner. And I think with a lot of people that have conservative mentalities about immigration, one, immigration is an issue everywhere around the world,
Yeah.
even like in Europe. I mean, if you're a country that has a lot of resources and opportunities, you're going to have people that migrate there. So it's not a US issue either. And two, I think most Americans and a lot of people are super opinionated. They just want to say, well, they should be able to fix their own mess. I'm like, well, who contributed to that mess? If you go back in history, you can see how we get our hands involved in many countries, especially in Latin America, with their politics, with sanctions, with drug war. I mean, we contribute to destroying economies south of the border. So a consequence is for those countries not able to take care of their business at their home. What is it? Is it M16, the gang, or M19? I forgot, the most violent gang that's known in Latin America that got started here in the
18.
United States. Yeah.
Yeah,
And we sent them to Guatemala and they got worse. So, in order to be accountable, we need to know the history of all the downfalls that happened throughout that region because we contributed to that. So, instead of
I
just
agree.
blaming some poor immigrant that you'll hear some text and goes, well, when it comes to kids, I'm going to do anything for my kid. Well, that's exactly what they're doing. Now, is everybody innocent? Of course not. But
No,
how are we going to fix the problem if I haven't heard anyone make the argument of the history of the United States meddling in Mexico and Central America? We meddled it with their elections during Reagan with Nicaragua. So it's a hot
sure.
mess, and I don't think that ever gets addressed with Republicans. And the Democrats, I mean, are they the savior? Of course not. So I just look at policies that are just going to help me get more aligned to the goals I would have. Biden, he took the tolerance policy away. I think that's a good thing. You shouldn't separate kids from their parents. No one has the magic power to know if that's the real parents. I mean, yeah, bad things might be happening, but that also leads to very bad things. So it's no easy answer, but I don't think people are being honest. They're being reactionaries. They see that and they react, but they don't really do enough critical thinking to know how it became that bad.
Sure. If I may, I would make a big distinction between the United States as a whole, the United States government, and globalist forces within the United States. This is where I think you would get, I mean, we're talking about things like NAFTA. You mentioned the European Union as well. And there is a lot of what we call forced migration. I would say this. I do think that America is a big haven for globalist forces that do policy, that create policy from here. A great example, the Aspen Institute is a think tank that's very powerful, that extends to every industry, whether it's media, manufacturing, government, and have put forth these policies. For example, the Obama signed this thing called the Merida Initiative. Are you familiar with the Merida Initiative?
Maybe not. So could you explain it?
Sure. It was in 2009. This was at the height of, well, it, the cartel wars had been going on for some time, but Obama signed into law this thing called the Merida Initiative, where the United States government gave Mexico $1 billion to combat drug
Oh
trafficking.
yeah, that's when one of your presidents was really aggressive against the cartels and more violence happened within your country, correct? I forgot
What
what.
happened? What happened is that the Mexican government took that money and they did stock up on arms. What they started doing is that they consolidated all power onto the Chapo Guzman cartel and
Mm,
basically took out all the other cartels, like
yeah,
the Juarez cartel.
I
And see,
remember that. I dated a woman that was from Mexico and she was from Mexico City, and her brother worked for the president at the time. So I would always hear that they would always pick up ransom money, kidnap politicians. So it's like a faction. You have cartels that will be implemented in the government's will, but you have to choose, it's part of politics. A lot of Mexicans say to make money, you gotta be a politician, a soccer player, or a nautical.
narco. It's
Yeah.
a sad reality. And, and it got really sad. It was bad enough that people were innocent bystanders were getting caught in the crossfire. But at a certain point, when kidnappings got really bad, then people started kidnapping like what you would call innocent people, bystanders. They started kidnapping other what you would call innocent bystanders because it was either their family or other families, and that's when situations really got like out of control.
Mhm.
I at that time I was really fearful for the young people, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, that were growing up and seeing this, and that was going to be what the world that they grew up in, and how they would grow up later and respond to this. I'm sure hearts would turn cold. And so, these are very complicated matters that I don't think you can just reduce them to a simple policy. But there is, like I said, I think there is a larger thing at play. And it's really sad that immigrants become the pawns in this game of ending are you
The
familiar with
power
the,
grip. Well, I mean, here's one thing that might give a point to the Democrats. Which party's more than likely going to end the drug war, the Republicans or Democrats?
which party is more what? I'm sorry?
Likely to end the drug war, especially with marijuana. I mean, Republicans are starting to entertain it, but Democratic states have already recreational. They already have recreational marijuana, and that will definitely put a dent in the pockets of the cartels, in my opinion.
Sure, but libertarians are really pro ending the drug wars as well. You know, I'll tell you, my personal stance is that marijuana definitely should have never been illegal. But I cannot co-sign on the legalization of cocaine, heroin,
Why not?
methamphetamine, because I see the
Wouldn't that
destruct.
hurt the cartel's bottom line? Portugal has done it and it works.
You know, it depends on how you define works. In the United States, the opioids were legal, and it created a mass crisis all
Because they
over
didn't
with
have
people.
any drug programs to help people get over the addiction. You don't have health care in the United States if you don't have money.
Sure, but a lot of people wouldn't. A lot of people won't do things because they're illegal. There's a stigma that's attached to illegality, and once that stigma is gone, it opens up the door for people to start doing it. I mean, again, we can go back and look at what happened with the Purdue family that was basically pushing legal heroin throughout this country, that they were prescribing it and lying about dosage, lying about. So I think you trade in one cartel for another, and the pharmaceutical companies, I don't think anybody can argue that they have now gained a very big foothold over most governments in the world.
I mean, two things could be true at the same time. Yeah, they're
Sure.
corrupt. They want money, but they also provide life-saving vaccines. And as far as like, you know, the argument for legal, I don't even do any drugs. I don't even smoke. I don't even drink really. I used to be a right winger, conservative, and pretty traditional. My home, Christian values, whatever. But when it comes to governing, I'm significantly more on the left. But as far as what Portugal has done, like you said, if they offer the ability, the freedom to do what you want, you have to have some kind of a health care and counseling, because the stigma there is like, hey, this is something that's going to mess you up, but we're going to help you get over it and not be addicted anymore. So it's going to take work. And we have data that's empirical to see the results of that kind of route and that kind of educating the public.
You said you live in California right now,
No,
correct?
I live in Texas.
Oh, you live in Texas. Yeah, I thought so, but you grew up in California.
First 2 years of my life, it doesn't really count. I don't even remember.
Okay. When was the last time you were in Los Angeles or San Francisco, if you don't mind me asking?
When I was two.
Two? You haven't been back since?
No.
I currently reside mostly in Los Angeles. Los Angeles, via their district attorney, has pretty much by de facto legalized drug consumption. And I mean, I tell people all the time, it resembles The Walking Dead. I mean, you have there's
Well, do
almost
they have the
no.
resource to treat all those people? They probably don't. It just started, you know, everyone's mainstreaming those ideas, which are progressive ideas, and they need to have the support to help people get over their addictions. If you make them go cold turkey, they die. It's not like you could just take it away and throw them in jail, because that's what's happening. If you know anything about addiction, which I don't, but I have friends that are on Facebook, addiction's a very crazy disease. You can't just snap it off. You have to do it gradually. We tried to do stuff
I've
like that in Texas, and then Abbott was like, "You're hanging out syringes," but that's the whole part of, you know, getting over your drug addiction.
Well, you know, I will tell you, I as somebody that has been through prison, and
Mhm.
I've not just me myself, but I've seen other people. There 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 is a period you go through withdrawals, and those
Mhm.
withdrawals
It could
are,
be deadly too.
it can be deadly, sure. But that time of withdrawal, after you get past the time of withdrawal, people then, it's a lot easier to break the cycle. I mean, in the time of withdrawal, that's when people go to their most extremes, when they start holding people up, robbing people. And I think that when you take away the penalties just for openly using, it encourages use, just like drinking. I mean, you know,
But why do people
drinking
take drugs and why do people drink? Why?
for a
It's a
myriad of reasons. I
it's
can tell you, I
go
can
ahead.
tell you, I've known people. At this point in my life, I know people from very low places. I know people from very high places. Like, I mean,
And to me,
Pacific
that's the
Palisades.
same reason for both of those demographics. It's a form of escapism. There's something that's not something they want to deal with when they're sober. So when they drink, it makes that pain go away or just normalizes a life in a way that's better for them to take. And if we create a better economy that helps people and they have security at home, you're probably not going to see as many people say, hey, I want to waste my money on drugs to take this pain away. If I have a family they want to spend time with.
Family they want to spend time with. They have a strong safety net as far as like community programs, resources,
That's not
sports.
conservative talk, man. That's left wing right there.
What sport? Talking about sports
No,
or
all those community outreach and all that to have like the government give you those opportunities and all that for an economy to help people.
I think that's what we call church. I think
Mhm.
that's what we call like communities of faith. And you know, church is really big in conservative circles.
Well,
So and that
the countries that do well in providing for their citizens are pretty non-religious.
um I mean there I think that's something that can't be generalized.
Well, in the United
There's
States, the red states don't take care of their people as well.
Well, I think in red states, people take care of themselves, and that's the difference.
There's data to show there's more infant deaths and more probably usage with, like you said, that pill and more in the southern states because they're not getting taken care of. Opioid.
The opioid epidemic that hit, there was not any part of the country that was spared. Just
The
like
red
the
states
fentanyl
had
crisis
more.
rate.
Yeah, you're right. But the biggest demographics that got hit was the South because I think there's more economic pain in the South that needs to be addressed.
I mean, I don't, I'm not as proficient in that piece of data right now. So
Look at
I
Mississippi. Can they drink their water?
you know what's funny, the thing about Mississippi, you know, that when the who was it that made the declaration of that their drinking water was that they needed like $1 billion
Obama did
or
that
something?
in Detroit, Michigan. I
Yeah,
know he
that's
did that.
Flint.
He drank the water in front of it. And yeah, that hadn't been resolved either.
Well, that in Mississippi, I know that there was this case in Mississippi where they were asking for $1 billion to fix their water problem. You had the Army Corps of Engineers down there. They fixed the problem within 2 days. And so, you know, and that's one thing that I'd like to talk about, where one of the things that really pushed me towards the conservative side of things was, I mean, deep down inside, I think I've always had a lot of conservative leanings. Like I said, my grandfather that came over, how much he loved this country, how much he loved having a business, being his own boss. You know, his nightmare for me was that I would ever end up on public assistance, and always try to teach me self-sufficiency.
I mean, there's
I grew
nothing
up
wrong
with
with
that.
that. That's a stigma that's not really, I mean, there's nothing wrong with getting help. That's what we should do as a society is help our citizens.
Sure, but you can only help when you yourself are strong enough to help. And I think that that's a big thing that goes missing when you start to just basically undo your entire foundation. When if you don't take care of yourself, you can't help anybody else. And I think that's why that's why this mantra of work, this mantra of being able to keep what you earn, I think that that's why it's so big amongst conservatives. I hate to say it, but I've in Los Angeles, I started living out there in 20 state, throw enormous sums of money at the homeless problem. And you know what? Most of the time it doesn't make it into the streets. We call it Homelessness Inc. There are a lot of nonprofits, a lot of these organizations that exist, and most of the money that's supposed to go to help, it's eaten up by administrative costs. There is a whole cottage industry that goes around. I think you contrast that with like church organizations where
They
people
have
give
private
money to the
jets and
churches.
they go on airplanes. They don't want to be with their constituents. Yeah, the churches are corrupt too, dude.
You have I will say this, and that's something that I don't think gets enough play or enough talked about. There is what's called big Eva, the big evangelical movement,
And
which
I'm in the
is
Bible Belt, man.
which is it's very much, I would say it's unbiblical, big Eva, because they preach a prosperity doctrine that I cannot find in the Bible. It's a league of churches where I think biblically the Bible teaches us that churches are supposed to be local. It's a local body. It's a local body, and that's what's accountable. From that local body, you send out missionaries. From that local body, decisions are made. In contrast to these evangelical societies
Fundamentalists,
that have branches.
Christian
No, I
Taliban.
think again, I can't. I hear that this Christo-fascist, Christian Taliban, and that's never been my experience in the churches that I've gone to. I've always searched out churches that are biblical, and again, I'll say it again, they are local churches that conduct all of their matters locally. They have a pastor, they have deacons, and their decisions are made there. It's not a league like you would have like the Pentecostals, for example, that it's a network. It's a network, or like Catholic churches, for example, that are also go all the way back to the Vatican. I think once you start, there is biblically something called the universal church. That's all of the believers that have all ever lived. But there's a big difference between biblical Christianity and unbiblical Christianity.
Yeah, that's
And
what I'm trying to say.
unfortunately,
There's so many differences. Why do we need to discuss it and get it involved in our politics? Keep it at your home. I mean, because you'll have somebody that's a Christian like yourself, and they'll have a big disagreement. And then if we align that with our politics, it's just not going to help with the progress.
well, so you have, for example, with abortion, I think the Bible is pretty clear: "Thou shalt not kill."
But you guys are killing people by dictating their choices. You have the freedom to choose whatever you want to do. You lead by example, not force. And that's what
Texas has one of the most restrictive abortion laws in the country, and since that law went into effect, remember Roe was stricken down, then
Yeah.
Texas's law, which has been on the books for more than a century, not one single woman has passed away ever since Roe versus Wade was stricken down.
I know. I
Not
just
a
had
single
this
woman in
debate
Texas.
about abortion with the last conservative, and he didn't know the statistics and a lot of infant mortality. Because one of the things is, if you're pro-life, I just think that's a false narrative. Because
But hold on, not a single person in
Mhm.
Texas has, not a single woman in Texas has died for not being able to have an abortion since the law took effect. You can take a moment and see and fact check that. Not a
Yeah,
single woman
I
has
mean,
died.
it just happened. We haven't really seen the systemic issues that happen with that legislation. And then you
Sure,
know what?
but
They're going to go to the blue states and go get freedoms over there. You're going to, and then the
exactly.
Republicans are going to say, see what they do over there, but they came from your state that you don't want to take care of. And why do people get abortions? For the same reason
Well,
you drank to escape. I mean, escape responsibility. I mean, I'm not saying I'm an advocate for that, but there's a lot of issues, I mean, factors why people choose to get an abortion.
abortion used to be something, what Democrats used to fight for was that abortion was rare, necessary. Now there's this whole it's a culture of abortion. People glorify it like it's some sort of rite of passage, if you will. And
I mean, I think that's like the online vibe that you'll get. But when you talk to regular people, and especially in Texas, they disagree with Abbott. It depends how you ask them. So even in Texas with conservatives, they're not really happy. That's why he doesn't really bring it up, because he knows it's not a very popular topic. The majority of Americans are against that.
Sure, but the Supreme Court ruled. Hold on, where'd you go?
Yeah, I'm right here.
So as far as this, look, the Democrats have had, within the last 12 or 16 years, they've held the presidency and both Senate and the House. They had the ability to codify.
Joe Biden being one of the lowest polling presidents in history. We hold our politicians accountable.
But but the Democrats have never put forward a bill to codify abortion.
Yeah, I agree.
Just like immigration, they had the presidency, they had the House and the Senate, and never put forth. And that was one of the big things that Obama ran on, was providing a path to citizenship, but they never brought that up. You know what they did instead? Obamacare. Obamacare.
They did the Dreamers Act. They helped out with that, but he was also the Dreamers Act reporter in chief too.
Yeah, he did. Yeah. So I'll tell you, like, the Democrats over and over and over and over again keep showing people, you know what? We don't do what we get put into office to do. That there's no real excuse for them never having brought forth either abortion or a immigration bill, and I'll tell you why they don't do it. Because a lot of
Republicans, they're not going to be pro-immigrant.
Because a lot of people that vote Democrat would turn their backs on them for those issues, and they know it. I sincerely believe that.
Well, I would be curious to see all that legislation where it failed, if it was at the House or in the Senate, because
it was never brought up.
It wasn't even brought up. Okay.
Never been brought up.
I haven't really done that much investigation with immigration policy during Obama. I just know he was also known as the deporter in chief. So every time I heard Trump supporters say, "Hey, the Democrats let open borders," I was like, "That's not true." And Joe Biden's kept intact some of the Trump's policies for immigrants right now. He hasn't utilized the port of entry issue that Trump took away, because they were able to come inside the United States and have a refuge to apply to become a refugee, and that doesn't exist because of Trump.
So when we say refugees, and this is why, again, I think this was one of the things that got us first talking. Mm-hmm. I cannot in good conscience call somebody a refugee, somebody that was enticed, somebody that, and this is what happened. I know this from first person. I didn't go myself, but other documentary filmmakers that were down in El Salvador, that were down in Guatemala, mm-hmm. that were there as they were going into cities and saying, "Hey, listen, come with us. We're going to provide logistical support. We're going to get you to the border. And as soon as you get to the border, you're going to get all the way up into the front of the line." I went to Tijuana and I saw it with my own eyes this time around. Why
wouldn't you want to leave one of those places? Guatemala is a very violent area with all the gangs, and then the border cities are not good places to be in either. If somebody offered you an opportunity, why wouldn't you take it? Because you're that principled?
Well, there's a difference. If it was that dangerous, they would have left before they were enticed.
It is that dangerous. You said yourself, and what is they're taking people's intestines out and selling them on the black market.
And I'll tell you, and yet those people, and I'm glad that you brought that up. And yet those people, you know what, they didn't storm the border. The people that were living in
storm the border. That's not what the Republicans say. I don't understand. You said they didn't storm the border, but yet we have Republicans saying.
I'm saying 2006, 2007, 2008, 2009, during the cartel wars, they didn't storm the border. There were people, a lot of cartel members, in fact, were filling out paperwork and coming over legally, doing the process. But there wasn't this massive migration that you saw back.
That was during Obama, when he was the deporter in chief. He was deporting people left and right.
He was deporting people that had already been here and had been here for a long time. If you remember, that was one of the big things, was like, how are they going to deport people if they have already started their life, if they've been here, if they've had children? So these were people that, even, as I said, I didn't become a citizen until I was 18. After having lived here my whole childhood, I will make the distinction again, though, that this was something that was my grandfather did as a single family. They weren't enticed. This was something that they did on their own.
So you
Organic.
want somebody to be able to just see danger in front of them, say, I'm leaving. But if someone says that's dangerous, you should come over here. There's a distinction there for you.
What I'm saying is this. I
You said
I
organic, and I'm assuming they have to come up with that decision themselves, not be counseled by somebody else to give them a good idea.
not being enticed. Yes, that I think that was what exasperated the problem, and that's where you started seeing that there was caravans that were tens of thousands strong of people that were being funded, that were being aided and transported. I and they're doing. Then you have the numbers. You have the fact that there
Where
were
did you
people
find all
from.
these caravans? Because I remember when Trump was talking about it. Was that during the Obama years? So all those caravans were coming, or during
No,
Trump?
that was early in the Trump years. That
Yeah,
was
'cause I remember him saying that we saw the caravans. There was a handful, but I don't think it was like
oh no.
thousands.
It was a lot more than a handful. There was it was years long efforts by Centros Sin Fronteras, who was being funded by George Soros's Open Society,
Hmm.
that were organizing all the way through, all the way. I think the thread that me and you first started talking on was a thread about Beto O'Rourke, who's running for Texas governor.
Mhm.
Um, a lot of people don't know this about Beto O'Rourke. Beto O'Rourke in El Paso, he was a city council representative.
He has like a
Um,
real estate interest, and his father-in-law or father, he took advantage of a lot of people.
Yes, but it's not just that he took a lot advantage of a lot of people. There was this plan that we're now many years into, and it's accomplished exactly what they wanted to, which was to change the demographics of the city. What they wanted to do, and this was this, and you can go back and you can find the actual Glass-Steagall study. The Glass-Steagall study was it was a branding study that was supposed to help El Paso get more tourists here. It was supposed to bolster our local economy. Um, and what they did is that they said to the citizens of El Paso, look, we're going to conduct this survey and we're going to take people from all different walks of life in El Paso, interview them, see what they want, and then we're going to make our plans based off of this. When it actually went down, they interviewed 40 people. All of the 37 out of 40 people had a vested interest in a downtown redevelopment, which has put El Paso now $2 billion in debt.
Mhm.
El Paso right now, it's literally the city government treats El Pasoans as like a credit card. They keep doing these certificate of obligation legislation, which they're borrowing from our future in order to fund this redevelopment of downtown. That one, it only benefits one side of town. Two, it's made property taxes really, really unaffordable, and it's caused a lot of older people. This city
That's
was
happening all over Texas. For them to say, they can compete, they have to draw tourists in. And that's just one of the areas they picked. I mean, I guess you could make an argument they should have picked another area, but that would have been a
well,
bigger investment to pick multiple areas. So that infrastructure needs to be able to handle that traffic. So I imagine there's a lot of scenarios to, give the pros and cons. I don't know. I'm not from El Paso, but I am from North Texas, and we have the same issue.
sure, but here was the thing. With this branding study that was the forerunner to doing all to now $2 billion worth of publicly funded baseball stadiums, renovations to buildings that are now privately owned. There
Mm.
was a study, and they said that they had to get rid of dusty, dirty old Mexicans and change the city to affluent whites. And so this is what I was confronting him on first of all.
Who said that? Beto?
Beto was the one who championed this glass speech study
I
and
mean,
got it.
he didn't say that. Probably some of those dudes that liked his idea said. I mean,
No,
you're
no,
like
no.
all
That
your
it's literally part of the study. It's published as part of the study. I think it's like page, and I even go as far as to hand them the page. You'll see it. I hand them the
okay.
page, and I'm like, look. So yeah, go ahead and press play.
All right. I'll put it on 5 minutes. Is that good?
I think that's probably good. Yeah.
All right. Oh, I had it on mute. I had it on mute because I touched. Okay. Well, we'll fix that. It might have been a technical mishap from my end. My bad. But as soon as he comes on, I think I'll be able to hear him. All right. Admit. Are you able to hear me now? Are you able to hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you again.
You know what? I think it might have been my fault, to be honest. So one of the things I can do, let me go ahead and try that again. I'm going to try to share that video again because I think I don't remember pushing the mute button, but I think it mutes it by itself, my mic, when I'm playing the video. So Zoom might be recording the audio, but I have no way of knowing until I finish the recording. So anyone that's streaming and you know how to do all this stuff, let me know.
Democrat handling of things, and it drives home the point that there is
Republicans do the same thing. I have a Republican mayor. We are renovating our city, our downtown area, and our poor side of town where Latinos live. They didn't have drinking water.
Who's paying for that though? Is it the city that's paying for it, or is it the
Private
individual?
businesses? Well, it's like we lure people in with tax incentives. I mean, they don't get to pay all the taxes, so they'll be more enticed to come over. And that's the whole point. If you're going to bring business, you need to pay higher tax rate than regular people. And we make up for the lack of taxation. Like Jerry Jones, how he got everybody to pay for his stadium. And he said, well, I'll bring jobs, I'll bring tourists. I mean, that's the same thing that's happening in El Paso. Republicans do it too. You live in a
here's the difference. No, look, I agree with what you, this is how you just described it. In theory, is how economic development is supposed to work. That's the whole basis of it, that you attract businesses here, you give them tax breaks on certain things like property taxes, but the tax breaks on like facade improvements, things that like add value to the overall area. That's not what happened here in El Paso. In El Paso, it's the taxpayers that are paying for it. That's my big issue. Not only that the themselves are paying for it, is that they were not on whether they were given a false paradigm of how they were going to pay for it. Well, it was sold this way. Started with a baseball stadium. The baseball stadium, we had a vote, and the vote was, is hotel taxes going to pay for the baseball stadium, or is the citizens going to pay for the stadium? They knew from the very beginning that hotel taxes wouldn't ever be able to cover that. And so there was a clause that said that if hotel taxes did not cover it, then
you pay for it.
Exactly.
And that's definitely cool to hold him accountable for something like that. That's fine print crap that you need to put in his face.
And it was based off of this
assumption. But did the hotel end up paying for it? You have
no.
Have you updated your research?
Nope. No hotels have not paid for it. In fact, the deficit has grown exponentially. That's why I'm telling you, it's grown now to $2 billion in debt, when at the time with this glass speech study was being implemented, we were completely solvent. We had no, the debt was very, very minimal. Keep in mind that this is predicated on this idea that we're going to replace the image of El Paso of, this is their words, not mine, and I'm going to send you the
whose words, like that. You got to blame that on an individual. It's not like they all said it in unison.
It's what the study published. So when the study was published, that's them, and the study was published, then the city council itself ratified the study. So it's on all of them.
It was a writing. It was on text where that accusation of dirty Latinos need to get out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Let me see. I might be able to actually just find this glass speech study super quick. But yes, that was the whole thing. This was all predicated on this idea that we were going to replace the image of dirty Mexicans with affluent whites. These are things that's their words. Beto O'Rourke was the one, he himself quarterback and championed this as a city council representative.
He probably didn't read it.
Oh, he did. Well,
You
he was and I know this because again, I was working in economic development at the time. I had a behind the scenes look at all of this.
Mhm.
I quit my job immediately. I started speaking out on the things. I had a non-disclosure agreement that kept me from speaking on the entirety of things for 10 years, but I did what I could speak out on immediately.
Yeah,
I joined go ahead.
I don't like Beto O'Rourke. I really don't, but I think he's better than Abbott.
You know, I can tell you there with Abbott, we haven't had anything similar happen to what has happened with El Paso's downtown redevelopment. And I
Oh
just
yeah,
fear
because you
that.
guys are connected to the national grid. You and I have a different story, buddy.
What do you mean?
The grid went out on other Texans. You guys didn't have the grid go out on y'all guys because you were connected to the federal grid.
You know that the only reason why that the grid went out was because Biden would not let us generate our own. There was an EPA ruling that was handed down right before the freeze that basically said that we had to import our energy from other places, and it wasn't until we had reached a certain level then we were able to generate our own. I'll pull that one up too.
Yeah,
where's this glass speech study?
They didn't winterize.
You know what? I'll send you. I'm going to send you the actual glass speech study.
Sure.
I'll send. I want to come into this
Sure.
interview really quick.
That's fine.
Okay, and
elected official in the city, could you help me? Because I think that in order to heal and really combat racism, as we say that we want to, I think we have to address the racism that's already here in our community. This glass speech study, it was supposed to be a risk study, which was supposed to be like everybody from El Paso. You would have people represented from different walks of life. What actually happened was that 37 out of 40 people that participated were executives, most of them who had a vested interest in this redevelopment. As of now, the names have not been made public. As of now, the city has never gone back and said, you know what, we paid for a study and we did not get what we paid for. And to make matters worse, now it has resulted in this runaway spending that is pricing many older people out of their homes. I think that there is solutions that can be had. In fact, could you commit to helping me in maybe reviewing some of the documents and seeing if we can kind of, I think to heal, if we can come together as a city and say, you know what, it's not right if somebody else comes in and does it. It's also not right if people here in the community do it. Absolutely, but if you, like people said, it's a city, which is not my. But at the beginning, when it was it's something, you can see what the county you have to increase taxes. Make sure that they're like paid. They don't discriminate.
Okay. The audio is a little bad on there.
is it? Yeah, you know what?
I had to look. I didn't know what the Glass Beach study controversy was about. So I was while you're playing the video, I educated myself. And it's pretty much they hired contracting. For the city hired this privately owned marketing subcontractor by Sanders and Wingo, and I guess their contractor was their contracting company that helps renovate cities. So that was a study that wasn't built by the city leadership or Beto. They said something on their PowerPoint that was on there, which I was looking at. So I just had to.
Beto was one of the 37 people that participated in. He himself was one of the people that participated in the study. His father-in-law, Bill Sanders, is another person that
That's the
That
part I'm familiar with. Like he was involved in like community buildings and all that stuff. So yeah, I guess somebody that made that PowerPoint was a little racist.
so do you like, okay, so this is my assertion that it was it we had our city, and this is why I don't want to see Beto as governor. This is why I can't in good faith say that he's better than Governor Abbott. Beto O'Rourke, I'm just to kind of bring it back full circle. It was him and his father-in-law that were part of this group. They were called the Paso del Norte group. The Paso del Norte group, they were both members of. They commissioned this study. This Sanders and Wingo, also part of Paso del Norte group. This was a group whose membership was never public. The reason that I'm privy to it is because I worked in economic development at the time. The sister organization to the Paso del Norte group was El Paso Redco, which is the one that I worked for.
It was commissioned by the city of El Paso, not by Beto or his dad.
He was a city council representative at the time.
Beto?
And he was a city council representative at the time. He was a city council representative from, I want to say from 2002 to 2000 from 2000 to 2006.
Yeah, because that's when this was done in 2006. So it was at the tail end of his leadership, I assume.
Yeah, this was the thing. So you have one of the things that you have to, like, El Paso is ground zero for all of this globalist stuff that I'm talking about. The Merida initiative that we were talking about a little bit earlier, fun fact, that was argued here. Michael Chertoff, who longtime government bureaucrat, came here, and the Paso del Norte group was one of the big organizations that helped put together the Merida initiative. It goes so deep. It goes so deep. This to do the viewers justice, you know what? I want to send you this raw file so that you can upload it, and it can be directly. It can be edited in, or it can be somehow, but so that people can get the full appreciation of what goes on in this exchange.
Can I add something? That quote about
Sure.
dirty old Mexican or whatever. I'm looking at. I'll share it with you. This is from the El Paso News. So I mean, I'm listening to you. And that's why I'm interested, because I don't know anything about this topic. But this is what I was reading from right here. So I see the quote where you're discussing. They're identified as El Paso as an old, dirty truck instead of what it could be, a new, reliable Infiniti SUV.
And look at the pictures too. It should show the pictures.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I'm just reading this text. I was trying to. I mean, is this not a reputable?
Yeah, those
source?
are the pictures right there.
Yeah.
At the very top where it says the Glass Beach, the story, you see that picture. There was that picture on the left. That was one slide.
I'm going based on what you said. Yeah, I mean, I can see the visuals there. I mean, that doesn't look good, but they didn't say dirty old Mexican. They implied it, I guess. I mean,
the actual slide. There's two slides. The first slide is that picture of the old man, and with the words right next to it, dirty, old, lazy. The next slide is the pictures of Matthew McConaughey and Penelope Cruz with the right next to them with the words reliable, multicultural, etc., etc. Wow. Okay. Right.
Well, I mean, I don't see that. What I see is what I see. So, I mean, I believe that they have some kind of messed up kind of representation of what they want to replace. That guy looks like he's cool. He has a nice buttoned up shirt. I bet you that leather belt's pretty expensive. He got some nice blue jeans.
Okay, come in. I have it pulled up right now.
Sure.
If you come in, this is the two slides. Okay, this is the first slide from the Glass Beach study.
Personally, male, gritty, dirty, lazy, speak Spanish. Yeah, that's not good.
Okay. Now, and then this is the new El Paso that they're trying to sell us on.
Did they show that in the city, or it was just amongst the people that were in the meeting?
Okay, so let me tell you. Here's another reason why I personally stopped. This is why I moved from journalism over to filmmaking because I saw the El Paso Times kill this story. They absolutely never did. The El Paso Times, by the way, in the downtown redevelopment plan, their building was bought out by the city, and the city continued to pay them rent on a building that they had already paid for. We demolished a perfectly good city hall that had just been retrofitted 3 years before for about $20 million, demolished it to make way for this baseball stadium that is now the property of this group.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really trust Beto because when he ran for president, he was doing all kinds of shady fundraising and all that. Hence, I believe that. I'm not going to argue and try to defend him for doing some shady business deals. I mean, all politicians do.
I would say a lot of politicians do. Sure, I'm not going to make excuses, but so big picture here. This immigration. I think it's such a shame that Latinos, Mexicanos, people from all over Central and South America get used as pawns in this game of replacement. There, you hear this term, the Great Replacement Theory, and how it's something that's very verboten, right? Like everybody was calling for Tucker Carlson to be deplatformed, and anybody else that mentions this Great Replacement Theory, but that's actually what's been going on.
I don't know if it's that. I think they're just cheap labor. You know who's ranked #1 in the world for being the hardest workers due to part-time, hourly work? Mexicans. Yeah,
yes.
The laziness doesn't come from south of the border, and they're willing to work really cheap. So they get exploited for their cheap labor. The elite love to do that. So it's not like they don't care about you replacing the culture here. They just want to go ahead and just give you a temporary visa, get your money and go. If you get deported, oh, well, that's your problem, not mine. I've seen this happen even in professional jobs, bilingual teachers. They got recruited from other parts of Latin America, and they were told, hey, we'll take care of your legal fees and all that. And once they get into the United States, they're stuck with the bill and they have to, abide by their contract. And if it expires, good luck, not our problem anymore.
See, I can't co-sign on that statement. I think there's a lot true there, except for the fact that right now they're letting everybody in except for Cubans. Cubans are the one exception in this right now, this open borders.
I mean, now I got some data to share with you now.
Cubans by and even Mayorkas is on the record. They asked him, like, what about Cubans? And Cubans are not getting the same treatment that everybody else is getting from Central and South America. You know what the difference between Cubans and everybody else is?
They're more conservative and they're more,
They've lived through communism.
Yeah, I don't compare Cuba to the United States. I don't compare Venezuela to the United States either. But I was going to go ahead and show you about what were we discussing? With the crime, the arrest rates. Okay, I believe no, sorry. Yeah, here we go. I mean, but this is just going to 2008. Unfortunately, it's not giving us a whole bunch of data, and I'm trying to find I believe this is it. Or no, those are notes. I'm sorry, I'm trying to find won't let me find the share. Why can't I share this? Well, anyways, what I was going to show you a lot from the right.
What I was saying not being hard. Cubans are not extended the same type of treatment that all of the other Cubans are not extended the same courtesies and treatment that all of the other individuals coming from Central and South America. And my assertion is that they're not given that same treatment because they're coming from a communist country. And so they know what a color revolution looks like.
I guess that's hard to prove, though. I just think they're not willing to. Well, I mean, they're not as many of them. We have a demographic we can pull from just south of the border, so it's a lot easier. They don't have to cross an ocean; they just have to walk across the land. It's not as logistically.
People from Cuba have to actually go through an ocean.
I know, that's what I said. It's harder for them to cross.
It's a lot harder for them.
So,
but I don't see why that would mark them for different treatment than other countries.
I mean, if are they getting rejected as soon as they make it
Yes.
across the,
Yes,
they get flopped?
I know, I personally know one family who there was 3 of them that came over. One of them, she had to go through 5 different attempts, and her brother was already here as a U.S. Army. He was working in the Army. He had
Here we go. I'm sorry. It just took forever. It didn't show up in my share options. I'm listening. I'm sorry. I'm trying to multitask. But you can see 2000. This is what I like about this. This is current data. We are arresting a lot more people now under Biden than, so I don't see Biden being an easy person on illegal immigrants. This is for, let me make sure I have the right one. Enforcement statistics, fiscal career. I'm sorry. These are the arrests for illegals. I'm pretty sure. I'm trying to find that for 100% certainty, because this is like enforcement statistics. I mean, it's for border patrol, but I want to go ahead and the largest federal investigation in the border. Keep territories. Yeah, because I just want to find that concretely. Include. Let me just go see what the search was, because I Google searched it. But of course, it doesn't want to do this. And I think this is like for, yeah, this is the most current. I mean, there seems to be more arrests. Are you there?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. What are your thoughts when you see more people being arrested by the Border Patrol than Trump? Trump was in office. There was a lot of people arrested, but it's doubled.
Well, first of all, the volume that's coming over from Trump to now, it's increased exponentially.
Yeah, because he got rid of the legal ways to come in. He messed up the process because Mexicans were able, or anybody that crossed the southern border were offered refugee status, which I know you're against, but now that results in.
No, I'm not against you. No, I'm not against people that come over as refugees.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not against people coming over and given refugee status.
Yeah.
I'm saying this: if they were provided with logistical services by people such as Centros Sin Fronteras, if in any way, shape, people should not be given refugees.
Yeah.
The specific position on this is that, can you hear me?
You broke up a lot there. Oh, this is the non-citizen statistics fiscal year of 2022. That's the title of this. Sorry, I didn't have that information. I had technical issues with the share button on Zoom, but that's what this is for non-citizens. So this doesn't include just Latin Americans. It's pretty much all immigrants. So I don't know if they're Cubans or from South Africa or whatever.
Yeah, there's no distinction made.
No, but there's more people being arrested.
There's more people being arrested, sure, but there is exponentially more people that are now surging the border. That's the difference. Of course, the encounters are going to be more, but we're talking about like exponentially more people that are coming. And so,
yeah, do you think that has to deal with what Trump did by getting rid of the legal way of coming into port of entries?
No, I think that has to do with candidate Biden saying, if I get elected, immediately surge the border. And then that's exactly what happened. People immediately
surge the border.
Yes, you're not aware of this?
Biden said surge the border.
If I am elected, immediately surge the border.
Okay.
Go ahead, look for it.
Candidate Biden calls on illegal immigrants to surge the border. Well, I mean, for one, also, I'm not a fan of Biden. And a lot of the things he says are incredibly dumb. I didn't vote for Biden in the primary because, I mean, Biden was part of the Obama administration for deporting many people. But yeah, I'll go ahead and check it out. Yeah, I'm looking at a clip. Yeah, I'm looking at a video. I'm looking at the video.
Yep.
Yeah. Now, here, let me see if I can share that video because I have a different context than you do with that because he's talking about refugees, and you could see where he emphasizes that, but people kind of not. I mean, we could agree to disagree. I don't know if you can hear it. Can you hear it?
No.
Ah. Well, he does say it. We could immediately search the border because if you're escaping from like crazy situations, you should be able to get out of danger. So that, yeah, I mean, he's Biden. That's all I can say.
That doesn't
Bad
that doesn't-
messaging. Yeah.
bad
If you wanna-
messaging.
I'm sorry.
But it doesn't square with the fact that there are, and there were before he said that and afterwards, that there are globalists. And I say this, let me be clear of what I mean by a globalist.
Thank
There
you.
are individuals from all over the world right now, very rich individuals. The World Economic Forum, there is a group of central planners who want to erase national sovereignties, basically like get rid of countries as we know them and have a global system of governance that they are in charge of. They want to, there's a few things, and we are now 2 years into the Biden, almost 2 years into the Biden administration, we're seeing all of this really take effect. They want us to stop eating meat. They want us to eat bugs. They want to get rid of.
Where do you see all that stuff?
Hold on. Let me finish, and then they want us to stop eating meat, and they want us to eat bugs. They want there to be no more gas-powered cars. They want it to all be electric. They want there to be no nuclear plants. They want it all to be solar and wind. They want the idea of owning homes and owning vehicles to be done away with. And they want people to only be able to rent homes, to only be able to rent vehicles, public transportation to be the norm. They're called the World Economic Forum. And you would need to do a deep dive. Biden he attended the World Economic Forum this last year. World Economic Forum.
Well, I'm not saying that you're wrong. I think a lot of people that are in the elite demographic have their interests. And what's bad, my criticism for normal people like you and me, we're too busy arguing and we don't organize to create and maintain our interests. Because the last person I talked to, he was very opinionated, but he doesn't even vote. Those elites, they vote. They make sure they can pass and filter the democratic process. But we don't hold anyone accountable if you're not voting in local elections, state elections. I mean, I live in an HOA. You know how many people show up to that? So if you're not going to show up, the globalists will. So
unfortunately, that's a problem, is political apathy. Sure, I mean, I'm not gonna, that's a huge problem. That's a huge problem, but a lot of the reasons why political apathy exists is because, gonna go back to Obama. Obama said, if I get elected, I'm going to get comprehensive immigration reform done and passed. It was never even brought up to a vote. There was no legislation that was ever written. Instead, Obamacare was prioritized.
Which was a conservative think tank. Romney, that's Romney Care. It was the same thing.
Well, but Romney was not president. Romney did not. Romney and the Republicans were not in power, so they weren't the ones that literally. I mean, you can make that argument if Romney had won, and then the Republicans, if Romney had won, if Romney had run on providing comprehensive immigration reform, you can make that argument. But Obama ran on comprehensive immigration reform, and he just didn't do it. He instead focused on Obamacare.
Was DACA not something that was comprehensive enough, or did it meet the standard? I don't know. I'm asking that not to hold you accountable. I just remember that being a big deal to him. Was that not something that made people that were immigrants happy?
Well, it's not comprehensive immigration reform because it focused on the children that had been brought here, but it didn't address people that had been here for any amount
Hmm.
of years.
And do you think
People
that
that
would have been something he could have realistically pushed through the Senate? I mean, because you
absolutely,
had Mitch McConnell. I don't know. Republicans welcoming change with immigration. They are more strict with immigration laws.
they had
Saw it.
he had a veto proof majority. He was, I mean, first of all, he was president, so there was not going to be a veto, but they didn't even bring it to a vote. They never even put in the effort to do so. I
That's a
mean,
good point.
at minimum, what should have been done is that legislation should have been written,
Mhm.
introduced. It should have gone through, and if it got voted down, then you know what? It would have put Republicans on the record as saying, "Hey, you know what? Anti-immigrant." But that never happened. Instead, what happened was that the national healthcare system was federalized, something that hadn't happened before. Now we have the extension of that. The next time is that you have COVID, and now the healthcare systems of the world were now brought into a globalist system.
Hmm.
COVID,
Mhm.
the response to COVID was not something national; it was something that was international, and
It
every
was.
single country fell into line. Because I feel like what we're living through right now, this is a really big part of it. It's a consolidation of power unto a group that is unelected bureaucrats from all over the world holding a very specific form of power because of their money. You had, do you
Well,
know
you
about the
know, businesses in the United States have constitutional rights, don't you?
businesses have constitutional rights? Sure.
They do. So, I mean, they can dictate
But
what
there
they
is,
want to see policies. I'm not saying you have to agree with it, but as a person that criticizes the interests of a business, you have to be aware what they're able to do. They're able to protect the well-being of their employees and their financial interests in the Constitution. So that's something that we can't just say, hey, you're a globalist. I mean, that's probably, yeah, they have an influence because they provide a lot of jobs and opportunities, and politicians are going to listen to that if they say, I'm going to take my business elsewhere. And that just goes down to my criticism of just regular people getting more engaged. Because I can give examples of how we've made change happen in our city and in our state, but not enough people do what needs to be done. And the countries that have better outcomes with education, entrepreneurship, and all that, their citizens are significantly more engaged and less religious.
let me ask you this. After having spent this amount of time talking to me, do
Mhm.
you think that I am any one of these things? Hateful, spiteful, a Nazi? Do
I
you
used to
think
be a conservative and a right winger. I'm related to people on the right. I'm related to Trump supporters. They just don't make good arguments for, I'm like, okay, well, why do you say that? When did you hear about this? But you provide evidence, but it's against Beto. And I'm not for Beto. I think he's better than Abbott. I can give you my reasonings for thinking he's better than Abbott, and you can give your reasons why you support somebody else. You didn't even say you like Abbott enthusiastically either. So
I don't like Abbott enthusiastically only because one, I think that he allowed himself to be bullied into pursuing he
what did he
we
get
okay.
bullied into?
There's a big difference between Texas's response to COVID and Florida's.
Hmm.
I very much prefer Ron DeSantis and his response to COVID. I just prefer Ron
But Ron
DeSantis.
DeSantis was not very transparent with all those statistics. He made people stop doing those questionnaires, like to get that data. I mean, that was a hot mess. COVID, I mean, I believe in two things with COVID: the empirical data that's factual and that's true, and also people's personal truths. Because let's take you and me, for example. What if you caught COVID, which I had already, and all you had was one booger come out? That's your personal truth. It wasn't a big deal. It shouldn't keep you from living your life, having something like so minor affect you. But at the same time, the empirical data shows our medical infrastructure got killed. And here in Texas, too, we needed to get money from the federal government to help staff the hospitals here. I have Trump supporting relatives that work in the medical field. They're like, oh, MG, this is crazy. So that obstacle existed too. And I don't know anybody that died from the flu, but I know a handful of people that died from COVID. So when I got COVID, it wasn't a big deal. And should have it made me not live my life? Probably not. But at the same time, I was like, if I get to go out, I'll put a mask. And I wasn't one of the first people to get vaccinated. I didn't want to be a sheep. I don't even get the flu shot. So, but when I saw all these issues happening with our medical infrastructure and, just if it allows me to go back to my daily routine faster, that was my justification for it. And they gave you choices. They didn't say you had to get the injection. You could get the weekly check to see if you were COVID positive.
Yeah, I mean, one, I, I, I'm glad that Abbott never tried to put a vaccine mandate like a lot of blue state governors did.
They didn't
That
know there was the mandate. That was the business that were saying they mandated you guys to get
that's
vaccinated.
you do know that just yesterday, or 2 days ago, there was a ruling that New York police officers and other emergency workers who had been fired for refusing to take the shot, now they're forcing them to rehire these people.
Because the
And
police union in New York's pretty strong.
so a lot of people did lose their jobs for refusing to take the shot.
And
That
you
happened.
know what occupation was number one in losing people for COVID? Police officers.
So I'm glad that Abbott didn't do that. I just think he could have been a lot more proactive in fighting back against.
He took Biden's money.
Yeah, and here's the thing though. When the government forces you to shut down your operations, I do think that at that point in time, they should provide money for that.
Trump was the only one that did the shutdown. Biden didn't shut everything down. He did it. He only did it. Did he? No, Biden did. I was thinking about like mandatory vaccines that only got applied to federal jobs, but there was no mandatory shutdown during
There
Biden
was
administration.
well, look, there was mandatory vaccinations all across the federal government
Yeah. In the
and
military, you
and
get juice
and
with
the
so many
military
things.
and the
Mhm.
military. And what's funny is that Congress exempted itself from that. The CDC exempted itself from that.
Yeah, because they don't have to stay on their top game defending our country against threats from all over the world. If you got one person that gets COVID, it's highly contagious and gets our whole troops sick, that's a security risk that we can't afford to take, as contagious as it is. So I can see the logic in the argument for vaccinating military personnel, which they get vaccinated with a cocktail of things already. It just helps them stay on point so they can do their job.
Unfortunately, though, the outcomes, excess mortalities are up, way, way up ever since from before the vaccine was available to now. Excess mortality is way up. There are even the United Kingdom, they stopped vaccinating people. There's a lot of countries across that have literally banned these shots.
Which
Banned
countries
them.
are that? I mean, I know they banned Johnson and Johnson but Pfizer.
No. There's like 2 European countries that in the last 2 months they banned it for everybody that's under 50. Hold on, I'll look it up.
Yeah, I mean, that's they didn't ban it. 50 and up have to take it because they're the most risk factors. They probably look, okay, who are the
No,
demographics that
they
don't really
banned
need
it
it?
they banned it for everybody that was not in that age group.
Yeah, that makes sense because the older you are, the more likely you are to get taken out by COVID.
But if it was that, we should be talking about immigration, but
Yeah, sorry. Well,
no,
yeah.
but it's all good. But I guess the basic point of that was that like back then, the similarities in Obamacare and in COVID was that you had power than what you would call a medical tyranny, in that.
Well, what do you call governing a whole country? People are not all going to agree. So you go with the majority. A majority of people like to get vaccinated. I mean, if you're on the losing side, you're going to be yelling tyranny. but you had options. You could have got tested on a weekly basis. Yeah, I think that's reasonable.
Not everybody had that. People in the military didn't have that option.
There's no
Neither.
freedom when you're in the military. You're the government's property then. I mean, as soon as you sign the contract, they got a lot of shows from back in the day. It's like, you belong to Uncle Sam now. I mean, that's how my conservative mentality was for the
Well,
military.
but in the military, you've always had this ability to have religious and or otherwise consensus objections. That was taken away, and that's
You think
tyranny.
people take advantage of that when they go in the military? Oh, I can eat steak because it's part of my religion. I mean, it can't get ridiculous either way. I think that's what when you go in the military, you're 4 years, you belong to Uncle Sam. I mean, as long as they make sure you're preserved and safe and fight for the interests of our country, that's all that.
But as it's turned out, though, with excess mortality up, with myocarditis being unseen levels, like.
But that's a tricky statistic there because that myocarditis is up, but it goes up even higher if you're unvaccinated too.
That's not proven.
That I don't know. I mean, I heard that from that Australian guy when he was talking to Joe Rogan. That's my source. He's a reporter.
No, myocarditis has not gone up for people that are unvaccinated.
Well, all right, so you disagree with the reporter from Australia that said that to Joe Rogan when he raised your point. Okay. I don't know, to be honest. I don't.
Myocarditis is not up in people that are unvaccinated.
Okay. I'll have to fact check that later. I'm not going to fact check that now, but if you're right, you're right. Cool.
You know, this is obviously it's your forum, your show. I thank you. I thank you very much. But you know what? I think one thing that would be really productive and really great. I think we've kind of established some of our like main points. We've put out a lot of points. Data.
Well, let's close it with the immigration. Yeah. I mean, you said that you don't like organic, you like it to be organic. That's my big takeaway. People coming to the country needs to be organic. You felt like they were getting persuaded in a very organized way.
Yes.
And to me, you don't really need much motivation to say, hey, get out of this area that's not too safe and come over here. I mean, it doesn't take much convincing if that's organized to you. But that's, I mean, of course, you're going to see that. That happens around all over the world. If somebody's enticed or not enticed, they see something better, they're going to gravitate toward that. And
but you're right. But that's the difference between somebody. You cannot be an economic migrant.
But I think we should make solutions to keep them there and not meddle with their economies, not meddle with their elections, and help now with the crime in those areas. Because a lot of places in South America and Latin America, there's a lot of drugs and cartels, and who are the biggest consumers of all those products?
You're making right now the biggest point of nationalists. This is what nationalists are saying. This is exactly what nationalists are saying. Like, you know what? We should stop with this NAFTA shit. We should stop with this European Union shit. We should return national sovereignty to the countries. We don't. Brexit, for example, the people of the United Kingdom, they did not want to have people from Brussels dictating to them what their national policy was going to be. And I think that that's the big thing. I agree with you. I don't think that we should be going in and meddling in, like, for example.
We've already done it. Now we have to deal with the consequences of our actions. So we have to help. That's I mean, if that means letting them in, let's make sure we do a good filtering job of who they are. Let's what's the word you were using to make sure they're good people come in, the processing of vetting them, make sure we do invest in vetting, because we messed up a lot of those places up. And send in some aid to make sure if there's any corruption, help flush out the corruption, like Pablo Escobar.
In theory, that sounds good, but right now our system is it's like overtaxed because of aid that we've been giving to Ukraine. I'm not even gonna step into that. That's a landmine that
I don't know enough to have an opinion about that. So you'd probably be able to put facts in my face. I wouldn't know how to counter.
There's inflation. There's a lot right now where our system is overtaxed. I think that first and foremost, the thing is that what we need to do is that we need to stop meddling in other people's countries.
That's what started it.
Hmm?
That's what started the whole issue, in my opinion.
And and literally that's what that's why I think Trump was such a threat to the establishment. You had such a
Trump bought
we
earmarks in China, man. He makes his he buy. I mean, he meddles with businesses in other developed countries and takes advantage of the labor over there. He's part of the problem too.
he was the first president that said we are going to bring the production back to America. We
He
are going to
didn't.
cut the incentives. Well, he did though. He took the steps by stopping to give incentives. There was a lot of
I think the NAFTA deal he did was just to help the dairy farmers. That was the only really big incremental change that we saw with his NAFTA deal. And I mean, Trump to me is like the Elon Musk that talks a big game, but they still take advantage of labor.
you like Trump went to the World Economic Forum and said we will not cede our national sovereignty. We will not fall into line with your plans to end our domestic production of energy. There's this clip that's right now really viral where he was telling Germany, hey, listen, you guys need to stop. You need to like back off, because what's going to happen is that you're going to be cut off from Russian energy, and you're it's going to be bad for you. And now they're living through this consequence right now. Germany is in a really, really bad position. I think what I was going to suggest though, because I know you had never heard of the World Economic Forum. You were not aware that there was a group that was like literally right now pushing for people
Like
to.
Davos, like all those elites that meet, and with Bono from YouTube that goes down there and talk to them.
It's a little bit more than that. Yes, that's on the surface, but the policies that these people are pushing, ending production of oil anywhere in the country. You know, there's right now, like for example, Sri Lanka, Denmark. There's a lot of countries where fertilizer has become illegal to use. And what that's doing, it's causing famine and starvation. This is like the underlying things that then push people from the third world up to the first world. If we can, as a country, first and foremost, here, stop allowing organizations like the Aspen Institute to dictate national policy, to use the power. Every single Fortune 500 company is part of this Aspen Institute. And when you look at the Aspen Institute itself, their mission statement is to help the world transition into a global government. What they hope is that if it starts from here, that the United States will be the, I guess,
Do you think
boss.
there would be like an efficiency with that kind of mindset? I mean, if everyone agrees to peace, I'm not saying I agree with everything they probably said. I'm not an elitist, but you know, if you're having to do business, if you had some values that complemented each other, and you know, we're not in that demographic, but since they are, they're going to have different interests, and to agree on those interests as who they are. I mean, I don't think that's so weird. I mean, you and I are in the same level, probably economically. We're having conversations we can both agree on because we share same values. They have shared values too. And they
Their
can,
shared values is central government. My value is decentralization through and through. I think all politics are local. I think that communities are based off of the people that you know, that you see, that you feel. And I think that.
So do you think the Mississippi should have as much representation as California? Or like, for example, Wyoming, they don't have a lot of people, but when they try to dictate their values with the federal government, do you think they should have much of a say what gets spread out to our country?
I think we have a system of checks and balances, and we have the way that the House works. The House is more allocated by population, and then we have the Senate, and the Senate never you rarely ever have legislation that comes from the Senate that's put forth first, if ever. Legislation always comes from the House first. The Senate is basically like a check or balance, however you want to call that, to the legislation that has been first put
Do you
forth
think
in
they
the
should have
House.
2 senators? I mean, to just kill legislation, like a smaller state like Wyoming, because everyone has like, I mean, I don't know if the senators are allocated the same way as the House. Of course not. There's less senators.
They're not. There's 2
So
senators
yeah,
per
2
state.
that's what I said. So do you think they should have 2 to be an even footing with, let's say, Texas, which has more people, more needs?
When they serve, if the Senate was in charge of putting forth legislation, I wouldn't think so. But because they act as a balance to the House, which first it gets written in the House, it gets passed in the House, and it goes to the Senate. I do agree with that, with the way that is structured. If it was the other way around,
I don't look at balance approaches. I'm more on the left. So, I mean, I think the solutions we need are going to be sometimes more left leaning, sometimes more right leaning, depending on each topic. And, I think that impedes on progress a lot because everyone wants to be considered. I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. I really don't identify with either side either, but it's just like a reaction I see from many people when we discuss politics. I'm like, okay, if we make sure everyone has health care, who cares? Everyone has health care, and if you want to talk about who does it more, people that lean left more, because by definition, that means the government is involved more. But let's make it smart government spending, because when you utilize it right, you actually save money, which makes it more fiscally conservative. People are healthier. They're not going to get obese. They're seeing their doctors. So over time, you're going to see the benefits of taking care of your people via the government, like some other developed countries do.
In my opinion, I think that beyond parties, there's a Constitution of the United States that makes this country to be unique. I think that
based kind of on the Magna Carta, and it was cut and pasted. I mean, we used slaves and women didn't have the right to vote. So, I mean, there's a lot of, it's meant to be amended, so it can change.
Well, Washington and Jefferson, they were both anti-slavery before. The only thing was that they needed other slave owners in order to make this country independent from Britain.
Or like that big thing that you're mentioning, the World Economic Trade, whatever, they had their demographic, they had to talk special interests.
There are trade-offs.
They're elites.
There are trade-offs in everything.
Our Constitution was made by the elites that you're criticizing now. So it's up to us to really define what we want, like healthcare. I don't care who does it, just do it. That's the people.
The people that wrote the Constitution, though, they were not the elites. The monarchy
they were the landowners. You had to be a landowner to vote. There was a lot of stipulations which you had to do to vote in the earlier elections.
But hold on. But when we're talking about the people that founded this country, when we went into a revolutionary war with Britain was the elites. Britain was the global empire.
Yeah, for sure.
We were part of, we were a what do you call it? We were a colony of England. Yeah. And so these people that rose up against the crown, they were not the elites. The crown were the elites.
I mean, the English had their subjects, they had their slaves. They both built from the ground up using the backs of people less fortunate.
This was one of the first countries in the world where slavery was abolished.
Yeah, and then they also took advantage of the Native Americans that lived here too.
Right now, Iran is up in flames because women couldn't even show their hair in public.
Yeah, and why did Iran get so conservative? Because of American intervention. They lost, the Shah lost his influence because of Americans.
The Shah lost his influence, sure, because of Americans too, but people didn't want to live under that rule. I mean, there wouldn't, you couldn't just, you couldn't go into somewhere and advocate for things that were unpopular and expect for people to
They were
join in.
authoritarian. The people that got in after Shah were religious authoritarians, and they pushed religious fundamentalism, the Muslim belief. My wife's Persian, by the way, and she says, I remember when I was a kid, we didn't have to wear all that. You're more free. And she blames Carter actually for like stepping in to ruining that lifestyle. She goes, well, the Shah wasn't perfect, but the people were happier then. And it didn't have the religious fundamentalism it does it as now.
Sure. But women are freer in America than they are in a lot of other parts of the world.
True. I agree. I mean, we have a lot of freedoms. That's why I value the First Amendment, the Second Amendment. I mean, I'm not a typical SJW person. I mean, just like I said, I'm conservative at my home. I'm Christian, I'm Catholic. I enjoy talking to people. I don't generalize people because everyone has a story, and that's what we have to make sure we have these conversations and think about solutions. Because what's the point of just like saying you're a racist? It's goofy to me. But I think we could agree that we need to invest in our country, but also we have to realize our past to handle the problems we have with our immigrants. I mean, you told me my approach was nationalistic, but I just think that's just recognizing the consequences of our past.
Well, what I said was that you were making nationalist arguments by saying that we should not be interfering in other people's politics, and we shouldn't be overthrowing democratically.
That was my criticism of what we did in the past, but now I think we have to do something to help them fix their problems because we kind of created a lot of them.
Sure, that's true. We created a lot of the problems, but I think that the biggest thing that we could do is that we could stop supporting people in these countries, that we could stop supporting and propping up dictators that are more friendly to our interests.
Well,
And I think
I agree. I mean, one of the things that's why I end the drug war. That would definitely help with the corruption in south of the border. Take away the revenue.
It's a really, really sad thing that we provided Mexico with $1 billion, and that Mexico then went and took that money and consolidated all power onto El Chapo Guzman's cartel, the Sinaloa cartel. That's just one example of things that we shouldn't be doing.
Take out sanctions for Venezuela. I mean, there's another one. I can come up with a lot of ways to better the economy in other places. But, in the meantime, we just have to have a better venting process. Like you said, that was a solution that I want to credit you for. Ben Shapiro even mentioned a good way to vent to people. Hire more judges, immigration judges, so you can get them taken care of faster, because even he was like, whoa, with the zero tolerance policy that Trump put out, he's like, you don't have to do that. Just hire more judges. And I agree with Ben Shapiro on that. That would help vent people more.
I would even like for individual Border Patrol agents to be able to question people and
they're pretty corrupt too. That's another thing that a lot of people are not honest about, how corrupt the law enforcement area is around the borders.
I mean, I definitely think that there's corruption, sure, around the borders. But why I wanted you to play that video.
I'm sorry I can't play because of the audio, but you did send me something else.
We definitely should have a part 2. You know what?
Sure,
because I would love to be able to, trade some information back and forth.
I can get you on a panel too, because I have a buddy that's from California that has a lot of opinions about immigration, and he's more right-leaning than I am, but he has probably a different mentality than you do. And it would be cool to see you guys have a conversation. Maybe him and I more align on immigration, but on other economics, we don't align. So it's cool to just have so many people come on and discuss it instead of that outrage we see on Twitter. And I'll try to make sure I won't have any more issues with my technology like we did today.
No, this is, this is great. Like, I mean, this is a great conversation. I think it's a conversation that's long overdue. You know, I hope that people will see this as an example of two people that can have differing opinions, but can still have a conversation civilly, discuss certain
I
things.
mean, I think we agreed on some solutions right off the bat. I mean,
Benny,
Benton,
for sure.
and address the sins of our past. Sounds good?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Wonderful.
All right. Well, hey, I definitely am going to invite you if you would like to come on again, and we could probably get a panel. I have people from different areas of the United States and one person from Europe that consistently like to engage. So we'll definitely add some structure, more structure for the next conversation, but just talking is also good to normalize as well.
Yep.
So, well, Luis, it was a pleasure to talk to you, and I guess I'll see you again sometime.
Emiliano, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much. I really
problem.
appreciate this opportunity. Have a wonderful evening.